Invention and Alchemy, let me just take you back and let you know what this is and what we're going to do. So Invention and Alchemy is a concert-length video of a live concert that happened in 2005. And there are several of us here tonight who were actually in that concert. It was captured, there were actually 3 concerts, 3 nights, and they were captured and made into one DVD basically, and that became Invention and Alchemy. And this all happened, it was kind of a dream come true for me. And it happened on 2 levels. It happened on the level of the instrument that I was playing, and it happened on the level of the music that I was playing. So I just kind of quickly want to give you sort of a background into this so you'll understand what this is. So when I first started playing the harp, I started playing the concert harp. And then I started feeling really constrained by it. And one New Year's Eve, I woke up. By the way, I'm Deborah Henson-Conant, also known as Deborah Henson-Conant, also known as DHC. And I am welcoming you to this, and I'm a little bit nervous just because I'm excited because some of the people who are here, and because this is the very last event like this that we're going to do with Invention and Alchemy, and tomorrow is the very, very last day that we can share it. And I'll just tell you a little bit like how that happened. So let me just say that I started playing the harp, and then one New Year's Eve, I had this vision that I was playing a harp. I was wearing it, and I was playing with a symphony orchestra. There was no harp like this. You could not wear a harp, and there was no symphony orchestra music like this. And so I set about in my life to make these things happen. And the first thing I did was try to learn to write for symphony orchestra. And I told everybody that that's what I wanted to do. And so I got this book called The Study of Orchestration, which you can see is very moth-eaten. And I started learning to write for symphony orchestra. And lo and behold, the Boston Pops called me up one day and said, hey, you want to play with us? And I was like, yeah, if I can write the music. And so that was my first opportunity to play with symphony, was to play with the Boston Pops. Nothing like starting, you know, at that level of like eyes on you. And so I loved it so much that I started doing this all over the world. So that was one side of what was happening. The other side is that I had this vision of this harp that I could wear, but there was no harp like that. And I went around to all the harp builders that I knew, and I described what I wanted, and they tried to build these little things, and nothing was like what I wanted. So finally, I built a prototype. I took a little lap harp, I put silver and red contact paper on it, and I took it to the most visionary harp builder I knew, a man named Joël Garnier, who was in France. And I showed him this harp, and I also showed him how I wanted to play, which was kind of like, and finally he said to me, ah, Deborah, now I understand what you want. And he built for me what was called then the baby blue harp, and you're going to see it in this film. And it is the precursor of the harp called the DHC, which ended up being my namesake harp. That is the electric harp that that company now makes. So there I was, I had this baby blue. So this dream was starting to come true. I'd started playing with symphony orchestra. I had this little instrument, and I went to a town called Grand Rapids, Michigan. And the minute I got off the plane, I knew there was something really special about this place. For one thing, when a guest soloist comes, often they'll just send like a volunteer or an intern or somebody to pick them up. And I was picked up by one of the donors of the symphony. And after the first rehearsal, I was so amazed at the way that everybody played. There was so much passion, and there was so much creativity, and there was so much willingness to play in different styles, and such an ability to shift genres. And I asked somebody, you know, what's the deal with this orchestra? And she said, well, this orchestra, unlike, you know, New York Philharmonic or something, this orchestra will be playing the symphony one day, and they'll be playing a pops program, and then a children's program, and then they're playing ballet, and then they're playing opera, and then they're playing musical theater, and then they're teaching. These are completely rounded musicians. And I could tell that, and their willingness. So I fell in love with this orchestra and this town. And at my first concert with them, which was an outdoor concert, it was really wonderful, really fun. And afterwards, a man walked up to me and he said, what I saw out there on that stage, I want the whole world to see. And I thought that was a lovely thing for this man to say. What I didn't know is that man was named Peter Wege. And he was a millionaire, he was a philanthropist, and he really loved the Grand Rapids Symphony. So he asked me to create a proposal for a project that I would love to do with this symphony. And I came up with an idea for us to do a CD together. And my partner at the time, who was a producer, said to me, "Are you crazy? Your show is so physical. Don't make a CD, make a DVD." I thought it was crazy, but I made this proposal. It took me a year to write the proposal, but I wrote it for this DVD. And when I wrote it, I also wrote a couple of stretch goals. I was like, I knew what I wanted. I wanted to bring people closer than the front row. I wanted to play original music. I wanted to feel like an ambassador to music and imagination. And I wanted to be able to feature members of the orchestra in ways so that the audience would get to see not only the whole orchestra, but they would get to see that there were individuals and that people's individual talent could come up and then go back into the orchestra, which is where the title Invention and Alchemy came from. The invention of individuals and the alchemy that happens when we are all playing together. So you see that invention and the alchemy. So one of the stretch goals was, I was like, well, I want to get a Grammy nomination and I want this to be on PBS. And when it was finished, it was everything that I dreamed of. It was beautiful. The lighting design is beautiful. The audio design is beautiful. The playing is beautiful. And it brings you closer than the front row. And it did get a Grammy nomination. And it did end up on PBS. And when those things happened was when I realized, never wish for a Grammy nomination when you could wish for a Grammy. But still, it was an incredible experience. So this was on DVD, and every music project, at least in the United States, it has protections, and every protection brings restriction with it. So this project was to protect the integrity of the project, it was confined to being presented on DVD. And so that was great up until about 2012, when DVDs started becoming obsolete and everything started streaming. But there was nothing that we could do about those restrictions because they'd been put in place to protect the work. When COVID-19 happened, I reached out. So the project was not seen by people for probably 7 or 8 years, unless you happen to have the DVD and had a DVD player. So when COVID-19 happened, I saw that the Grand Rapids Symphony musicians were starting to create videos for their audiences because I'm on their mailing list. And I thought, I have a video with the Grand Rapids Symphony that we could maybe let their audience see. And so I called them up and I said, look, is there any way you could talk to the American Federation of Musicians and ask if we could share this as a fundraiser for the Grand Rapids Symphony for a limited amount of time? And we were granted that opportunity. Again, of course, there were restrictions. We couldn't just put it on YouTube. It had to make sure that people RSVP'd, which is why all of you have RSVP'd. But that was the restrictions, and also to protect it. And so that's what's been happening. For the first time, actually, in ever, Peter Wege's dream that the whole world could see this has happened because of COVID-19. And thousands of people have been watching it. And then the last couple of weekends, I realized that I could do these events where I could actually meet with people and show them. So that's what's happening here. And are there any questions so far? I just love that we're all together here. And what I'm going to do, you can just put questions. In fact, everybody just say hello in the chat window. And then I'm going to take you behind the scenes because there's some things I want to show you before we watch, because I think they're going to make it more fun for you to watch. Okay, good. All right, so let me take you backstage for a moment. And I think I'm just going to, okay, you don't need to see this. Okay, all right, so I want to show you some pictures. All right, and things to look out for when we watch this. Okay, so here we go. So this is the concert master. This is Jamie. And normally he's the like kind of the head violinist. And normally the violin section plays as a section, but you're going to see him coming out, as you'll see several musicians kind of come out of the whole orchestra. So I want you to keep your eye out for that. And this over here, you are going to see, this is David, who is here with us tonight. You're going to see a big timpani solo at the end of the first half of the show. So I want you to keep your eyes out for that. And I want to tell you that that timpani solo is something that David actually wrote, and then I asked him to, because I thought he would do a better job than I would, and he did. And so you'll hear what he wrote for this piece. And I'm eternally grateful for that. Many other percussionists, many other timpanists have played it since then. You will also see the conductor get off the podium and come down and play the cello. So I want you to keep your eyes out for that, because that's really fun. And what else? Oh, yes. And I want you to know that when the percussionists at the end play on garbage cans, those truly are the percussionists. And this guy here is Bill Vitz. He's the head percussionist. And this, I think this is David Hall, who is the second percussionist. And those truly are percussionists and not garbage men. Although I'm sure they do a great job being garbage men as well. Oh, and here's another thing I want you to keep an eye out for. This guy, whose name I always remember, and like suddenly I forgot it. He is an incredible bass player. He had just started playing with the Grand Rapids Symphony. He had never played blues. And so I asked him if he would play a blues solo, but not in the normal blues way that you would, but to really show the bass in a different way. And so he will play a solo with the bow. So when usually you hear a bass play a solo in jazz or in blues, they're plucking it, but you will hear him do that with the bow. Joseph Conant.
Joseph Conyers.
Yeah, who's an amazing, amazing player. I also want to direct your attention to the lighting. There's some really incredible lighting in this film, and this is just one example. So keep your eyes peeled for that. So that's one of the things that I want to show you. And then this is also a conductor, by the way, who ended up playing two serious roles. One was a mad scientist and the other was a sultan. And this is the producer, who was my partner at the time, Jonathan. And they were, at this point, you'll see them playing with latex gloves, and we actually hired a physical comedian to help them learn how to do all kinds of crazy things with latex gloves. So I want you to see that, which we wouldn't do now because we wouldn't waste them. I also want you to keep your eyes peeled for this camera, which is the Harp Cam, which is a really cool camera that we put onto the column of the harp. These are just all things I just want to make sure you see when they come up. Okay, great. And now I want to just give you the feeling. I think I'm going to give you the feeling, and I'm going to show you how we first kind of built the set. So this is the feeling. So you'll get a sense of like where you are. This was the outside of the theater. This is the beautiful bridge in Grand Rapids, and the rapids, I think. Well, I don't know, I think the rapids are elsewhere. This was the lobby. So imagine that you're in a theater with a lobby like this. And this is a view from the stage and one of the cameras. The stage is obviously, the audience isn't there yet. I really want to direct your attention to these two trucks, because having a television crew and a television station to take all of this, everything for that was in these two trucks. These were a whole television thing, and it came down from Canada, from the CBC. And you'll see here that those trucks not only had all these supplies in them and all these cables, there's 10 cables here, which are going to 10 different cameras, but it also is a television studio. And so inside of one of those trucks was this studio where you can see all the cameras, camera 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, all 10 cameras. The director sat right here, and next to him sat the score reader, who was telling him, okay, the violins are coming up. Okay, the timpani's coming up. Okay, this is coming up. So this happened. When you're wondering, like how do you get something like this? Well, we came in a truck. And I wanted to show you this one. This is 1 split second. So this gives you a sense of all the cameras that were being used right in that moment. So this is a sort of a normal way you might see me from the stage. This is if you were pretty close. This is on the back side of me. So somehow there was a camera on the other side, another camera way in the back of me, There, and of all of us. And this is way far away from the stage. Again, behind, very close, very far away, on the other side. And so I think a lot of these were handheld cameras that they walked around with. And then here was a camera way down low, so you could get this really kind of cool view. And you will see all of these. And I think we often don't notice all those different shifts, but it's cool to know them ahead of time. This is one of the guys with one of the big cameras. This is some of the lighting. The lighting was pretty intense. And I think it was a little anxiety provoking for some of the musicians, but the lighting designer asked us to put a monitor on stage so that the musicians could see how beautiful the lighting was. And when people complained, we would let them go see what it looked like. And that helped them know that it was worth it to have this kind of lighting. So this was this was another kind of lighting, just colors. But this picture is, for me, this was my favorite camera. It was kind of like a dinosaur, a big dinosaur that could go anywhere, could kind of fly all over. These are lights that also needed to be brought into the back of the theater. And again, a view of the theater, so you can start just seeing that the themes of the lighting, so you'll notice them as it's going. Again, just a test of the lighting. And this was an interesting lighting. So you will see everyone dressed in lab coats at some point. And you can see that the lighting designer also tried to do something a little bit wacky and yet tasteful, I thought. So things, and that's the Harp Cam. And I wanted you to see the lighting board. So the audio board. So you can see that there was this huge audio board, and you'll notice that you can hear everything. You can hear the orchestra, you can hear the harp, you can hear the voice, you can hear the audience. And in fact, we discovered later on that this was not the final cut of this. So you will hear some kind of weird audio things happen, like you'll just notice them, like suddenly it'll be soft, suddenly it will be silent in between tunes, and that all got worked out later on. But this happened to be the cut that we had. This was the guy checking, again, lighting, more lighting checks. And this is a microphone down near the bottom of the harp. So to get a really warm sound off the harp, even though the harp had pickups on every string, a lot of the warmth of the harp will come out from the bottom of it. So we had a microphone right down there for that. This is one of my favorite pictures. These are I think these were two of the either lighting designers or cameramen who were impersonating flute players so that the other cameramen could figure out, how things were going to be lit or how they were going to look at it. I love that. Also of this guy impersonating me. And those are also some of the camera guys. This was my makeup person who was so great and so invaluable. And she just was with me all the time to make sure that when I got sweaty, it got worked out. Those are the main pictures that I wanted to show you there. And then my camera, my favorite camera. I love this guy. It's like having a dinosaur in the house. Okay, those are the main things that I wanted to show you on that. This is the harp, which is the prototype of the harp I have now. This harp weighed about 18 pounds and it had 30 strings. My harp now has 32 strings and it weighs 11 pounds. So this was a lot heavier than the harp I have now. And these are just this is important because when you realize when you have this huge crew, they need to have food. And obviously they are health nuts. So I just like realizing there's so much that goes into a production like this, including the food. All right, I think those are the main things that I wanted to show you. And okay, good. The final thing that I really want to show you is just to take you back to the very beginning of when we first put this together. And this was the very first picture of, like, we had a director come and work with us and we were like, how are we going to put this show together? And the first thing he had us do was put it together on little colored pieces of paper. That this was the show run. This was how we were going to run the show. The next thing we had to do was figure out what the stage was going to be like. And so he sent us off with push pins and we each made a version of the stage. And so this is, you probably can't tell, but this is orchestra, and then this is the string players, and the conductor would be here and there would be lighting here. And we thought that we were going to have ramps that we walked up on so that the audience would be able to see some of the things, like when I went back into the back. We learned later on that the cameras could just follow me and we didn't need that. This was my version of, so this had little push pins for the strings again, and then little wooden things for the harp, just to kind of see where everything was. And then this was another one of those. And then you see the one that was made by the director that we were working with. And obviously he made this in the same amount of time we made the others, but his was so much more involved. And you can see that he even was imagining these would be the lights and this would be some kind of a backdrop, and then the orchestra would be here. So we were all just trying to get start playing with the ideas like a little kid would play with them so that we could see how they would work. But then there came a point where I realized I was going to have to move around. And so instead of having push pins, I started using chess pieces and little animals. So the Tyrannosaurus Rex is the conductor, and the pterodactyl is the concert harpist, and the monkeys are all the percussionists. And I don't know what this one is, David. I don't know what this animal is. I think it might be a groundhog that was playing the timpani. And then you have birds for the woodwinds, and other animals, pigs for the horns, not because they're pigs, but anyway. And I was a kangaroo because that was the animal that the harp fit on the best. And this was really handy because I still thought I was going to have to walk up a ramp. You'll see this in the show to actually play with the timpani. In fact, we didn't have to do that. Thank goodness. We could keep it very simple. So this again is just, you know, seeing how we were able to play with the orchestra. And this was when we were playing with the lighting. You can see that we probably had like a flashlight here so we could see what that lighting would look like. I just like showing that. I just like showing these. These are my favorite thing to show here. And I think that's it. This is just when we were on PBS. I don't think there's anything else. I don't know what 30 means. So those are the main things. All right, I'm going to come back and I want to tell you just a couple of my favorite things. So is it fun to see this stuff? I mean, I'm hoping it is. And I hope that it'll help you enjoy it even more. There's a couple of my favorite things that I just want to tell you about so that you keep an eye out for them. When we did the shtick, like there's some pieces that have some comedy in them. And I basically just asked everybody to come up with ideas themselves. And one of my favorite moments is when I said, who is it sort of a officious looking person? And the personnel director said, like, I'm an officious looking person. And I said, okay, so can you just get a clipboard and walk around and just come up with some stuff to do? And he came up with some really fun stuff that you'll see in the beginning of the second half. But my favorite thing, and it's not obvious, so I really want to show it to you, is that he walks out on the stage and then he takes a remote control and he points it at the concertmaster and he clicks it, and that's what starts the beginning of the second half. And I just love that moment. And one of the other things that I love that I didn't see in the beginning but started to see later is just watching the musicians enjoying each other so much. And so just keep an eye out for that. So that is all the things that I wanted to show you to begin with. So I wrote all this music myself, and when we were preparing for it, we had about less than 18 months. I think we had less than a year to do it. We had a couple rehearsals before I met with the orchestra. I had a reading rehearsal in July where we just read the music. So we did this, we recorded this in November, I think 12th, 13th, and 14th, or 11th, 12th, 13th. And in July, we had a reading rehearsal. I also wrote everything that you'll see. I also wrote it for a 7-piece ensemble so that we could practice the whole show twice before we ever had to go on stage. So we recorded the whole show with the Boston Classical Orchestra in, I think, April. And then I went out and did a reading rehearsal, rewrote everything, and then recorded it again with David Lockington. And I don't have those there tonight, but I called them maquettes. So they were chamber ensemble versions of every single one of these, because I knew that once we got on stage with the whole symphony orchestra, it was literally going to cost something like $1,000 a minute. And so we could not be futzing around. We needed to know exactly what was going to happen, and the director needed to know what was going to happen. So that was one of my favorite parts. That really made this work so that we could have that freedom by the time we got to the show. And I think you'll see that. And that is it. So what we're going to do is I'm going to take you to the theater. Let me show you the theater, which I have not brought up for myself. So let me bring that up. It's going to look like this. Yeah. Okay. And then you're just going to hit that button, and that will start. And everybody's will go at about the same time. And when it's all done, we'll come back to the Zoom room, and then I'll answer questions, and David can talk to you, and Sterling can talk to you, and you can ask, all of us questions. Okay, so here's the link. So can everybody just click that and make sure that you can get to that page? And on your mark, get set, and go.